Well, it is my complete honor to get to sit down and have a conversation with one of the coolest people and greatest musicians I've ever had the pleasure of working with. It's also a really interesting thing because he's, of all of my musician friends, I think I've known him the longest, almost my entire life. So here I am talking with my pal, Mr. Brian Jarrett. Hey, Brian, how are you?
I'm doing good, but I do like your loose definition of the term musician. I don't know that I've ever.
You're too modest, buddy. You are absolutely too modest. It's just a pleasure to talk with you today.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this conversation leading up to today, and it's really interesting because, yeah, I have known you for over 40 years because you and I are the same age.
Yep.
And we started in kindergarten together in elementary school. We've known each other this whole time.
Yeah. I often tell people that's just my oldest friend, my best friend. And, kindergarten, yes. I remember when you were very young, you had you went around singing. I remember going to the old free home school over kind of going towards Canton in the gymnasium with my grandparents and watching you sing, listening to you sing and all that stuff. And my grandmother bought one of the vinyl records and we would go back to their house and they would listen to it and they just, always, but our lives have been intertwined musically for a very, very, very long time. In excess of 40 years. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And in a lot of different ways too, right? Because, we wound up playing a lot of gigs together eventually, but before that we did stuff at school together and played drumline together, and then I remember you being in musicals that I was playing in the orchestra for, and I mean you've had a really cool life of getting to do a lot of stuff with music.
Oh yeah, I didn't, high school was really the time I didn't even start playing guitar. I guess I was 15 when I started tinkering with it and kind of getting interested in it. And then eventually it was the last thing I did every night before I went to bed. First thing I did every morning when I would wake up, I would grab that guitar and I would play. And then I found out I could sing. And I didn't know that I could sing, but I just sang and people were like, hey, that's not bad. I was 15, 16 and just kind of continuing on that thing. But it's always been a family thing for us going way back to my grandfather and even before that.
I was in the same boat. It was a family thing. And as far as back as I can remember, that was just what we did, anytime. And I was very lucky on both sides of my family that whenever there was a family get together, music would break out, right? It was going to happen. Someone was going to pull out a guitar or somebody had it. There was always a piano there and everybody wound up sitting around playing and singing.
Yeah. We never had a holiday, 4th of July, Labor Day, Christmas, whatever it was. We never had a holiday without music and at least one guitar. And actually, funny, I mirror that experience back to my grandfather. He always used to talk, they would, big thing in their house growing up was boxing. So you had everybody gathered around the radio and lo and behold, it was always, I don't recall the boxer's name, but he would say, he'd knock the guy out in a round or two. And then what do we do? Because we'd all traveled miles and miles to be together to hear this fight. And then it was over in 10 minutes. So we had guitars and, so that's my mother's father on my mother's side. And, but he always talked about that. Actually, my very first guitar that someone bought for me was his old guitar, a Martin P18. And, just a great, great guitar. And then I was raised also, my stepdad growing up, a very musically inclined family. Everybody played guitar. Everybody sang, the men, the women, everybody. It was like they had their own, Partridge Family kind of group growing up. But that was always part of what we did. We got together, we celebrated, we had good times. All my best childhood memories, I can say, honestly, happened on my carport with a guitar and just whoever was there,
That's so great. I don't want to sound like an old guy complaining that things aren't like they used to be,
It's okay.
But I'm going to for a second and say I do feel like that some of that is not as present as it used to be. And it's sad to me that time feels like that it's past, and it makes me sad.
Well, we live in a world where I want to hear a song, I can just literally go to my phone and hear it. And I think there's value in that. I mean, because sometimes I'll be like, oh man, what was that song from the 80s that I used to sing? Or what was this song that I used to like? And you can go and find those songs. And it's a great, amalgamation of information. But where there's take, there's also give. And so the part that has gotten given and has shrunk is the community around music. Because, like, I remember going, just not even music, but going like camping out for concert tickets, like,
Yes.
a day ahead and spending the night and getting my tickets at 1 a.m. and just stuff like that. That people now, nobody does that. They go online, they get a ticket, they download it to their phone, and just the experiences that we had. I really feel like we're one of the 80s and the 90s, one of the great, the last things of music bringing kind of everybody together in that sense. And that's something that is lost today because I can just go to my phone and I don't have to go anywhere. I pay $10 a month and I'm done. You know what I mean?
For me, I remember a couple things about stores growing up in Georgia. I remember going to Turtles and coming.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I remember going and waiting out there for concert tickets. I got Rush tickets.
Exact same store I went to, by the way, and camped out.
Yes.
Mine was White Snake.
Okay, nice. And then I remember going to Tower Records at Lenox Mall. You would carve out hours to just go and walk around, and just that tangible experience of picking up a CD, or probably at that point it wasn't vinyl. It was probably a lot of CDs and cassettes, and holding it.
Right.
And it's an experience I wouldn't trade for anything.
No, 100%. I remember it is a lost thing. And I remember the big thing on like Fridays at old Midway Elementary School was somebody to bring the boombox, and then somebody would have a suitcase, full of tape, and we'd be whatever and playing music and kind of walking through. But it was just a part. Music seemed to be a bigger part of who we were back then than maybe it is now. Maybe for certain groups or certain people, it's the same. But I know for me, it certainly has changed, and I miss that to an extent. It's a great memory that I can hang. When my kids ask me about it, I tell them stuff, and they're like, "That's just crazy," and I'm like, "Just how it was, buddy. I don't know what to tell you."
We were just explaining to Sophia the other day about what it was like on a Friday night to go to Blockbuster Video and walk around and run into half of the school or people that you knew from the community, and walk around and try to pick up the latest movie or something you wanted to see. And if it wasn't there, you didn't see it.
Right.
You didn't have the option to just scroll through a list of streaming titles and you watch what you want. You had to make an effort to go and try to find it.
Yeah, we live in an on-demand world, and back then, on-demand meant you left your house and you drove 20 minutes to the Blockbuster. And the thrill, though, I will say the thrill of, like, say, a new release, because they used to put the new release would have, 50 copies of the movie. The thrill of finding the movie you were looking for unmatched.
Unmatched. I agree.
Joy. I was like, here it is.
My memory of that, you would walk up to the counter. They wouldn't even have time to put the movies back on the shelf, and they would just line them up on the counter.
Yeah.
And you would dig through it.
Your movie, you'd be like, I want that movie. Yeah.
You would grab it before anyone else had the chance to get it.
You'd have somebody over there going through the movies to see if their movie had been returned. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that was a good time.
Man. Look, I know we sound like the old guys on the Muppet Show right now, and that's okay. But those were great moments, and I miss those.
Oh, there's nothing better, man. I just, and then even in high school and then right after high school, having bonfires at somebody's house, and I'd always bring my guitar. And sometimes I'd play it, and sometimes I wouldn't. Sometimes it was cool just to hang out. But I always liked the camaraderie. Everybody, where's your guitar, man? It was just kind of part of an identity of who I was. There's Brian, and he plays guitar. Let's invite him to the party. So I got invited to a lot of cool parties I probably wouldn't have otherwise have gone to, but it was because I played guitar, and I was okay. I was okay with that.
I understand and can relate to attaching. My identity was attached so much, probably with music more than anything, and that's what I was known for. It helped me break through some barriers of maybe being a short, shy kid, and that was my go-to thing, and then I felt more confident because of it.
That's right. Yeah, and that's kind of, you mentioned earlier, like the musicals and things like that I did. We did a couple here and there, and my big thing was my senior year. I was Daddy Warbucks and Annie, and that stuff. being able, coupled with like guitar and being able to perform in front of people, really made an impact because I was the, you said you were the short, shy kid. Well, I was the jovial fat kid, and it was like, but finding ways to interact with people beyond just, oh, I'm popular or I'm this or I'm that. But finding those ways to interact was always very important to me. And music did that for me. Music, guitar, and then, and then getting into musicals and singing and just the really kind of putting your all into that and making sure that you do it. You want to do a good job just naturally. And it was just one of those things that always spoke to me and stuck with me forever. And it has been a big part of who I am and who I've been for the better part of 30 years.
Yeah, it's I understand. I understand 100% what you're talking about. Yeah, I get it. So let's go back to when we were little kids, when we were little. So we both grew up in the Midway area, which is the big metropolis of between Alpharetta and Cumming, Georgia, South Forsyth County, for those of you with an atlas that may want to look at it.
Yeah.
That's where we grew up. How was that experience for you? I mean, when geographically, for me, I loved where we lived, and how was that for you?
It was the great thing about growing up in Forsyth County was the sense of community. It always seemed wherever we went, and my stepdad was a mechanic, so a lot of people knew him. A lot of people brought cars to them. So we were in certain circles, I guess I'd say he was. A lot of people knew him, and he knew a lot of people. So anytime we went somewhere, but it was good, easy living. As far as there wasn't a lot of contrast that to today, and I don't know how many people even live in Forsyth County now. It's got to be in 250 to 300,000 range of the amount of people that live there. I have no idea. Feel free to fact check me on that if if you're out there and you have so the desire. But growing up, it was a small town. It was everybody kind of knew everybody. Everybody ate at Doris and Paulette's. Everybody. We had those famous little restaurants and cafes and stuff. You had the Super D on the square where you went and got toys, and you had, it was just a way of life that was very simple. Not at all what it is today. Today, there's a lot of, I don't know, what would you call them, highfalutin, folks that live down there. It was a rural community. It was agriculture. It was farming. It was chickens. I can't count the amount of chickens that I've seen in my life in Forsyth County. I don't live there anymore, but I know they're still there. But growing up, I had a great childhood. I think I had a great childhood. We were always very stable. We were always, there was always something to do. Well, I say always something to do. When they built the movie theater, maybe there was always something to do. There just wasn't a whole lot in the town, So not like it is today at all. It's a mecca for entertainment now, but back then it really was. You had the roller rink. I spent a lot of Friday nights at the skating rink, trying not to fall and break whatever bones
right
I had.
with
That was it. It was the 80s. It was big hair and roller rinks, and that was it. It was simple.
That was it. If you wanted to go to the mall, you had to go to, at least for us, we had to go to Perimeter Mall, or you went up to like Gainesville. So it was 30 minutes to an hour if you wanted to go to the mall, and it was people cruising around in the parking lot of Tri-County Plaza on the weekends. That was it. That was the pace of life back then. Yeah.
I had an aunt that used to take us. My aunt would take us to go cruising.
Yes.
At the time, I would say she's probably in her mid to late 20s, and I was probably 13 or 14. And she had this big brown monstrosity of a car, like a Lincoln Continental or something. And these guys are all cruising in their pickup trucks and their cool cars and Camaros. It was a big thing. And here we come. This thing's smoking. We're cruising up, but those are good times, man. The cruising and just hanging out. You could go anywhere in town and find friends,
Yeah, it was so cool. Yeah, I was young, so I was always the passenger in someone's vehicle driving around in the parking lot. But those memories, man, I'll remember those forever. It was so cool.
Oh yeah, it was a good times. It was good times growing up there. Yeah. It was. Sometimes I miss it, but then when I drive down there and see the traffic now, I sound like the old man on the Muppets, like you said. I just want no part of that. I work from home now. Like I'm good. I don't need to commute anymore like that.
Yeah, exactly. So when you were growing up and in those early years of your life, what kind of music was playing around your house? What were your parents listening to, or what were you listening to?
Yeah, yeah. I would say, younger, it was always country. It was always country with a little bit of, we had a one of those big old stereos. You remember they were the big consoles. They were like 5 foot long,
Mm-hmm.
like a
Yeah.
vinyl. We had an 8 track player in that, and so my mom had. I remember the first time I ever heard Queen was on that eight. She had an 8 track of Queen, and I popped it in, and it was Fat Bottom Girls, I think. And just being like thinking this is the craziest thing I've ever heard. As far as what they listened to was what I listened to, and we always listened to the Y 106.7 out of Atlanta
Mm-hmm.
that played current and older country. I mean, George Jones was always a big part. George Jones was my stepdad's absolute favorite. Red Sovine, all those old trucker songs. Phantom 309, Johnny Cash, of course, Waylon, Willie, all the outlaw country. What they call outlaw country now was just country back then, right? So it was like
Right. Exactly.
but a lot of that and holidays, my mom would have, because all these country artists would cut Christmas albums, so we'd pop in the Christmas album for whoever and listen to that. But growing up, it was always older country. There was always some Southern rock in there because we live in Georgia, and there was, and Leonard Skinner was always a big part
Mm-hmm.
of everything that we listened to, and hearing all those old rock songs, and Allman Brothers, and you'll hear me. I'm sure I'll mention Allman Brothers. That's probably one of the biggest musical influences, though that didn't come later until my teen years. But growing up, but listening to all that stuff and hearing it, and then rediscovering it later, kind of is the context of like I remember hearing Ramblin' Man and Blue Sky and all that stuff, but not discovering it until later when I started playing
Right.
music myself. But it was always country, man. It was always, Doc Watson. It was always, just a lot of the older, what I consider now the older country crooners. The George Jones and the type was always huge around our house.
Yeah. Well, it was the same for me.
Yeah,
It was Merle Haggard, George Jones,
yeah,
a lot of Ricky Skaggs. He was one of my heroes growing
yeah.
up. We
Oh yeah,
heard a lot of that, and yeah, no, I understand. It is amazing how it's kind of like the soundtrack of your childhood, and
yeah,
then when you get old enough to kind of start being more of an active listener of stuff, at least for me, you kind of rebel against it a little bit. Maybe you'll say, well, here's some things that I know I wouldn't get to listen to at home, or that wouldn't
right,
be playing on the radio at home. But then somewhere along the way, maybe you kind of find this middle ground and find this music that you grew up listening to, and then what you chose to listen to, it kind of becomes one and the same at some
yeah,
point.
yeah, yeah. And I think that looking back on music, the great thing about music and the thing that I've always loved about music is that kind of like you mentioned, I hear this song that I used to hear when I was a kid, but now I'm older and it has a completely different meaning. But I still can relate that back to that memory. Sometimes I can remember where I was, like in my mom's old red Ford Chevy, my mom's old Chevy truck that we used to drive around, and but hearing those songs, not wearing a seatbelt by the way, because we didn't do that crap back in the '80s, and
That's right.
but
That's right.
how music can link you to a memory so very hard, almost visceral in the way that it connects you emotionally and being able to remember, what song was on the radio when this was happening, what song was on the radio, or what kind of frame of mind was I in. The great thing about music is I hear like you mentioned Ricky Skaggs, and immediately I was like Highway 40 Blues. Remember being in my stepdad's truck riding, listening to the Highway 40 Blues and things like that, like just amazing, amazing songs and all that stuff. Alabama was, you know,
Yes.
another one for me. I loved some Alabama when I was a kid. I knew every song. I mean, I still do, but just those connect me so hard to my childhood. That's just like hardwired into who I am and kind of those musical memories.
Yeah, and we'll talk more later about kind of where we are now, but we're both not playing music much these days,
Mm,
right?
right.
And I'm curious about what that's been like for you, because I will tell you that when I was really playing a lot of gigs, when I was playing many days a week, the last thing I really wanted to do was to listen to music because I was sick of listening to music. And now that I'm not playing, I feel like I get to be an enjoyer of listening to music again, and it does, these emotions of listening to it kind of flood back,
Yeah.
and it brings back all of these sense memories of maybe when I was younger, and I'm going back and listening to stuff that I hadn't listened to in 30 years, and I'm curious if you've had some of that as well.
Yeah. I think in the context of there are always moments, and the great thing about songs too is they can change meaning for you over the years. I remember at the end of my first marriage playing that song, playing Amy by Pure Prairie League, and then there's the end of the song. There's falling in and out of love with you, and they kind of repeat that line a few times. And I remember for a few years after that, I couldn't sing that song. It really, was something that was a reminder of kind of a difficult time in my life, but I think it has evolved and I've become friends with that song again. So yeah, songs like that kind of connect you to either a good or a bad memory. And I hope I'm answering your question right. But yeah, having those experiences and kind of linking that back to childhood and even watching certain songs and certain music evolve over the years is truly a blessing and a curse in a way. Like you mentioned, not being able to enjoy music while you're playing so much music.
Right.
I totally relate to that because there are just times where because you know how it is. There's a certain group of songs like everybody knows Folsom Prison or whatever, but nobody wants to play it. Everybody likes the song, or whatever, but like it can change shape and it can change meaning for you over the years, and just kind of relating that back is one of the things I've always enjoyed about music is just being able to do that and to connect that with memories over the span of my life.
I remember Lisa and I going to a concert over the summer, and I think it may had been the first concert that we had gone to since had been playing all the time.
Yeah.
And I remember her looking at me and saying, "It's so nice just going with you and watching you not sit there thinking about what they're doing the whole time." And yeah, you're right.
It is so hard as a working musician to go somewhere and see live music and to not be like, you're playing that wrong. or just being critical of their tone, or I hear a buzz in the speaker, or I've spent years and years in bars and restaurants kind of all over North Georgia and whatnot, but it's hard to go somewhere when there's live music. I have to go where I know the music's going to be good. I will not go if I know it's going to be crappy.
That's it.
I'm not going because it'll ruin it for me. But I do know what you're talking about as far as being able to enjoy music. I've took my son over this summer. We went to a Michael Jackson tribute band concert thing, and he's really big into Michael Jackson right now. Loves all the dance moves, does all the stuff. Hee hee. It's so funny. We'll be in the living room and I'll hear a hee hee from upstairs, But I was truly able to enjoy that. I was truly able, one, because I don't play a whole lot of Michael Jackson songs, but just the entertainment value of it and watching him discover music has been a blessing too, So.
Oh yeah, right there with you. So we go through elementary school. We're proud alumni of Midway Elementary School.
Mustangs. Oh yeah.
The Midway Mustangs. We left there and went to South Forsyth Middle School, which at the time was, I can't even believe the fact that it was a combined middle school and high school.
Yeah, I had classes with seniors in my class.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we started there as 7th graders and had people who were old enough to vote in some of our classes, which was crazy. Were you doing anything with music in middle school? When did music start with you at school?
I would say I was 15. So I think middle school, I was more experimenting with sports. I was trying to be a football player. I was terrible at it, thank God. And then, I really didn't do anything musically during middle school. And that was only, like you mentioned, we were 7th. We only went to 2 years of middle school because it was the transition from the old system to the new. But I don't remember doing anything other than chorus. I did because by then I had kind of discovered I kind of like chorus, and and it was an easy A, but I think I did chorus and whatnot. But really, my freshman year of high school, not to skip away from the middle school, but there wasn't a whole lot going on musically other than I would say going to concerts, because I was definitely in seventh or eighth grade when I went to Whitesnake, seeing Steve Vai. Steve Vai played guitar for them at the time, and he was a huge guitar.
Wow, yeah.
So he was a huge guitar. I'll tell you what, I'm going to reframe this, and the memories are coming flooding back. So before I started playing guitar at 15, in middle school, I had this thing where we had an old guitar it didn't have strings. It didn't work. It was an old electric guitar. And I remember it was white with like black stripes. It was kind of like a Van Halen kind of feel to it, but it's kind of a rip off of that. And I would sit in front of my mirror, play music, and mimic what I thought was the sound coming out of the guitar on this old guitar without any strings, by the way. I did end up repairing it years later, and it actually kind of worked. Whatever, but I will say that. So there was two things that I used to do. I used to sit in front of this guitar and dream in front of this mirror with this guitar and dream of kind of learning to play guitar one day, never thinking that I would. Then the second thing that I would do, as you know, my other musical passion at the time and even in high school was percussion. I was enamored with drummers. I was really enamored with Greg Bissonette was kind of one of my big, the way he played was just magnetic to me. And I remember seeing a video of him somewhere on MTV. They were doing like a documentary on him because he was a very famous,
He was probably playing with David Lee Roth at the time, as I'm guessing.
Yeah, that sounds right. That sounds right. And, but I would remember, hangers in closets now are just a big piece of plastic, but it used to be a piece of wire and you had a cardboard tube.
Yes.
I would take those tubes off and I would sit in front of my mirror again, working on my timing, and doing all and I had no jackass idea what I was doing. You know what I mean? It was just, but it was so ingrained in me. I think it's kind of like with my son. Like I have no idea. He sees I play guitar and stuff like that, but it's just ingrained in him. And he gets it from both sides because my wife's grandfather is Tommy Rowe,
That's right,
singer from the 50s and 60s, and I think you guys are even related somehow on that front. I don't know,
I think we are.
But sitting in front of that mirror, and the drums was my big thing. Because I felt like I was better at pretending to play the air drums than I was the air guitar. It just sounds so ridiculous, but it was truly one of my times of escape. I would come home, I'd do my homework, I'd do whatever, I'd procrastinate my homework, whatever, but I would go and play these tapes. And we had, that's kind of when I started getting into buying music and consuming music. I spent so much money on, but bands like rap, kind of the counterculture to country, right? Let me go punk, let me go awful punk, but even things like Kiss, George Michael. I remember George Michael's album coming out. That song Faith was a big deal. Me and my cousins would all sit around and make up dances to these songs. It seemed kind of, I had all girl cousins, by the way. I just had no choice. It was either play with them or don't play at all. Right? So we would always, even from a young age, they would make up these dances to like Grease when that soundtrack was out, and it was popular in the early 80s. But consuming music and consuming all kinds of music. I mean, I had stuff in my tape collection from, like Run DMC. Aerosmith was a big one. Joe Perry changed my life. George Michael, like I mentioned, but all these tapes of all these people. And then I'd have like some George Jones in there. I'd have rap, George Jones, Merle Haggard tape or whatever. And what was funny is, I didn't have to buy any country tapes because we already had them. So I just steal them. Right. I just steal them. Borrow is a better word. From like my stepdad or my mom. And so that was kind of the foundation. Now that I kind of think, because I was thinking about this the other day, I was like, what was I doing? But put it in context of middle school, I was consuming all kinds of music. And then we kind of get into high school where I start playing guitar. It's kind of that journey from middle school. But I was basically just consuming music in middle school.
But I would say that probably was a springboard for you were developing your ear.
Yep.
You were building your sense of time and rhythm. And then you move into high school, start playing, and all that stuff that you had been absorbing then spits out for you creatively.
That's right.
And I try to, I would try to tell our daughter that you need to be creating as much as you're consuming. Right? If you consume X amount of content, you need to be creating X amount of content.
I agree. Yeah. I think so. And I think that it all kind of started out as a competition between me and my cousin. I was over at his house and he would come get me and pick me up and we'd go get some food or whatever. We'd just tool around, whatever. And we were at his house and he said, I started kind of playing guitar. He said, listen to this. And he started tinkering with it. And it was the intro to Dream On by Aerosmith. And I thought, dude, that is cool. We had one guitar. It was his stepdad's at the time, and we just kind of traded back and forth. And I'm like, I didn't even know how to hold it, but that competition kind of started off, and then pretty soon, it wasn't very long before I was playing songs, for my mom and stuff. I still remember the first one, "Straight to Hell" by Driving and Crying. So that had to be like 1991 or two. So their album had been out that was just my favorite song at the time. she was in the bathtub taking a bath, and I went and knocked on the door. I said, "Mom, I got a song. I think I got a song I can play for you." She said, "Okay, let me hear it." And I play "Straight to Hell." And at the end, my mom's a beautiful Southern lady. She said, "Well, that sounded really nice." And I have no idea what the lyrics mean. I just know we're all going straight to hell, right? And my mom was so nice about it. But anyway, that's the first song I ever played for her.
Oh, that is fantastic. That's great.
Yeah. Have I never told you
That's
that
awesome.
story?
No, I've never heard that.
And then the floor outside my mom's bathroom, I'm playing "I'm Going Straight to Hell." It was,
Oh, that's fantastic.
yeah. She goes, "Well, that was nice." I was like, "Okay, cool. Mom likes it." So I went back and learned more songs.
There we go. The bar has been set.
The bar has been set.
Oh, that's great. So here we are in high school. I was a big old band kid at that point. I mean, I had been doing middle school band and then into high school band. And then you started playing percussion, which was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By that time, I started playing when I was a freshman. I played and played and played. I was in the point where I was doing it, like I mentioned earlier, every morning, every night, just kind of playing. Sometimes I'd lay in my bed with my eyes closed and try to get my chords just to make sure that I could do this stuff. Because the hardest thing for me was transitioning between chords at the time when you're first learning. And I was all self-taught, taught by ear, or whatever. I can read rhythms. I don't really read music. I never have, but that's why percussion had kind of appealed to me because it was like, I can play these. And I remember coming over to your house and we were in your basement. And you had a book and you're like, this is a quarter note. This is a time signal, like teaching me literally the first theory I had ever been exposed to as far as what a quarter note is. And there's two, those are eighth notes. But I remember the first day we got through like half the damn book. I mean, it was just,
I remember that.
I soaked it up. I remember you telling somebody, you were like, he went through like 4 or 5 pages in 30 minutes. And I just had a natural knack for reading, rhythms and things like that. And I think that's why when I play guitar, I play percussively. And I think it all goes back to that because, you got to have percussion. I don't know. You got to have something in there. I don't know. I just have always liked the sound of a nice percussive guitar, So,
yeah. I had been thinking about having this conversation with you. I thought about that day and I remember thinking, wow, he gets it. And you see those light bulb moments with people. It was like it validated everything that you had been doing. And it was like, oh, okay, this all makes sense now. This is the information that backs up all of this stuff that I've been doing for a while.
It really kind of cemented everything because it was like, oh, this is stuff I've already been doing. I just didn't know that I was doing it. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
And knowing where the changes were and knowing, and I remember discovering something that stands out about me, about my whole musical experience, because I wasn't a musical person really. And I didn't play. I played half of my junior year, I remember, during concert season. And then all of my senior year, I did both marching band and then concert season and all that. But I remember it just kind of cementing for me what I had kind of known. It was like discovering something that you already knew, but you know what I mean? You just hadn't quite placed the connections together yet. And when that happened, it was really, I kind of had a knack for the rhythms and I kind of had a knack for, and I never got beyond playing bass drum, but, I can't do all the fancy, paradiddles and all the, I do this thing where I do paradiddles on my chest like all the time. It's a habit.
I do it too.
Seriously, just I'll be out somewhere, I'll be patting my chest, and people will think it's so funny, but I'm drumming. It's just kind of in me. But it was truly that whole musical experience during high school, and really even marching band and rhythm and being. I thought quite good at it. I thought we were good for a little AA school. We were just a tiny school. They're like 6A or 7A now. I don't know. They got thousands and thousands of kids there. But being able to kind of make that connection was really, like you said, validating. It was really like, okay, this is cool. And then I could take what I learned from percussion and apply it to guitar, and what I had learned from guitar kind of about performing in front of people and stuff, and kind of mixing that all together was kind of what formed my identity early on,
Yeah, no, that's it. And I wouldn't trade anything for my public school music education that I got. And I think the things that I learned starting in the 7th grade, I used every time I would go and play a gig somewhere. I mean, that was, it really they were the building blocks of my whole musical life. And I think it's important that that kids get involved if they have an interest for music in any way, getting involved in an organization of like-minded people and playing and having to rehearse and learn music to perform together. I think it's important because that learning the process of it, I think, is what is the most valuable lesson of it, is learning how to learn it.
Right. Learning how to learn it, learning how you learn, because different people learn different ways. But I think the thing you connected there was playing music together, because I've had fun playing music by myself for people. Don't get me wrong. There's absolutely nothing like stepping up on stage with a bunch of your buddies and producing something. You know, I can play the same song, but you never, and I don't care what anybody says, you never play the same song the same way. And so I've always looked at it like, we produce this art, we create this content, and it's truly a special moment. And maybe I'm overthinking it, but it's just kind of how my philosophy has always been of, of creating these moments of serendipity or of appreciation and kind of getting that energy back from people. It's the best feeling in the world. And you know that you've done something good. And if you're lucky, you got paid to do it. Although, that's not why you do it. I always tell people I love to play music, but I'll never do it. I'll never do it for free just because, unless there's a call, and there's a charity or something like that, but it's just amazing how all that kind of comes together.
Yeah, it really is. There's nothing like getting to play music with other people.
Yeah, that you like.
That's it. Yeah. I've played music with people that I had met that day and had a great time. But when I get to play with people that I just love as human beings, there's nothing better. It is an experience like no other.
I agree.
So yeah, it's great. So after high school, you went to college.
Yeah.
And where'd you go to school?
I went to Georgia Southern, first in Statesboro, Georgia, which is about 4 hours southeast of Atlanta, kind of towards Savannah. Went there for a while. Had some high school friends that went there also, and always had my guitar. I took my first music theory class I ever took was there. And I remember the guy being like, "Hey, does anybody play guitar?" And I was immediately like, "I'm your guy," So what he wanted was, at the beginning of one of the classes, was to come up and demonstrate on your instrument what the instrument sounded like. And, he had like a clarinet player and a horn player, brat, all the stuff, and guitar, and somebody had a big Congo drum or something, it's supposed to be just like a 10, 15 second little thing, right? No, I wasn't having that. So I went and practiced, because it was like, he's like, give us like a week heads up. He's like, hey, next week come into class, let's do a little ditty, whatever. I was like, okay. So I just heard recently, I got really big into Stevie Ray Vaughan, and I'm going to mess the song up. I don't remember, but there's this lick where he does, it is an instrumental song. This whole crazy thing. And I was nowhere near that. So I came up with kind of my own version of that lick. And it ended up being like a minute long, and he ended up having to stop me. He's like, okay. And I'm in there, I'm just jamming on the stage. And when I got done and I struck that last chord, the whole class, there was like 300 people in there. We're like, it was like serendipitous. You know what I mean? It was just one of those things. I was like, holy crap, that was cool. And that's when I started kind of getting into playing out places and stuff like that. Because just that energy of getting that love back from people, that was enough for me. I was hooked right then.
Yeah.
I went to UGA. I transferred up and met some lifelong friends there who I'm still friends with today. Music, we started a band. That was the most awful band probably in the history of Athens, Georgia. But it was, I think we played 2 or 3 gigs total. But I get there and I'm going around looking for roommates. I need to stay somewhere. I got to stay in an apartment. And I walk into this apartment and there's a set of drums in the living room where there should be a couch, but it's outside. They'd taken the couch outside. And it took me about 3 minutes to be like, this is where I want to live. Because there was a guitar, there was bass, there was drums. They had beer caps everywhere. It was crazy. It was a crazy party time in my life, really, of just kind of that college experience of, of being around people. But I will say that there was a moment. So we were called Baja del Sol. We were not Spanish. It was all a bunch of gringos. And I don't remember why we named the band Baja del Sol, but it wasn't my idea. But we get into kind of playing around each other and kind of swapping musical stories. And we had a virtuoso in our house. Okay, his name was Bob Ruggiero. He was Italian, the guy from New Jersey, and he had started playing guitar about 4 months before that. And he played harmonica, and he could play percussion. He had never played music before in his life. And in 6 months, he was already better than I was. And at that point, I had been playing for 5 or 6 years. It was infuriating. And he was a big Grateful Dead fan and Allman Brothers. We were all Allman Brothers fans. And I remember being in the living room one day and we were kind of running through something and we started playing Blue Sky. And I just remember being like, this is the coolest. I was probably just standing there with a big shit-eating grin, or excuse me. I was probably just standing there with a big grin on my face of, this is so cool. It's happening. This is the beginning of it. We're going to win Grammys. I mean, it's one of those ridiculous things, but I just, it really was another moment, like a light bulb moment. I've had several I've had through my life of here, and this is cool, and this is fun. And we did some gigs together. We even wrote some songs together. Couldn't remember any of them now, but we had a good time. I mean, it was just one of those things of going out with your buddies, your roommates. We all lived together. We all fought. I mean, we fought like brothers. It was crazy. It was just like stereotypical stuff you hear, early on of like one of those bands trying to make a difference, make whatever, and it was a truly interesting time in college for a few years. I was there for a couple of years. It really helped me. And I went home on the weekends. I'd go to school during the week. I'd go home on the weekends and play. That's when I got hired for my first gig at Spawn Divots in Cumming, Georgia.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I played at Spawn Divots as well, and yeah, that place was a staple of that area.
Yeah. And a lady named Tina Jones. I know you know Tina Jones.
Yes.
Was working there and was a manager. I thought she was the most beautiful person I'd ever seen in my life at the time. And I was like, she was like, I played a couple songs for free for like a lunch crowd one day on a Saturday. And she's like, you want a gig? You got it. And then I would go, because in college towns, there's no jobs. Nobody tells you that there's no jobs for people. It's just all the kids working for nothing. So I'd drive home on the weekends. I had a restaurant job at a barbecue place. I'd work 7 a.m. to 1, get cut at 1, 2 to 6, go play music, come back 7 to 11, close the restaurant. It was literally like a 20-hour day. But I made some good money, and I made a lot of memories in Spawn Divots and playing just for the late afternoon lunch crowd. It was so random, but that was my first introduction, getting paid and getting, kind of learning stuff. And then from there, it was just, let's play everywhere we can, So
that's
kind of took off from there. Yeah.
That's great. So when you were playing at Spawn Divots, did you meet Mark Mundy around that time? Did you know him yet? When did you meet Mark?
So I met them at Spawn Divots. So I've been playing there for a while, and I was just turned 21, because you couldn't go in there and play if you were, it was a bar. So I just turned 21. I had met Mark, but just in passing. So an old friend of ours, John Langdon, played drums with them. I think they were called the Hooplas at the time, maybe.
Yes.
So John played with them, and we had gone to a house. And he's like, this dude's in the Urban Shake Dancers. He's an amazing guitar player and whatever. And he was. I just remember sitting there being like, this dude's on a whole different level of, just whatever. And then the Spawn Divots connection, their band played at Spawn Divots pretty much every Friday night or every other. They were there several times a month, and knowing John, and John knew that I sang and stuff. And so one night, it happened to where their singer, Jody Abernathy, Mark Mundy was there. They had a guy that was a chiropractor that played on the bass. I don't remember his name, but he was a chiropractor. We called him like Dr. Nate or something like that. I forget. But so I got introduced to them through John, and one night at Spawn Divots, and we did a song. Hey, do you know this song? And I'm like, yeah, I know it good enough to do it. Let's do it. And that was kind of more like an acquaintance at first, and that was probably, what year was that? It was a long time ago. So
that would have been like 90.
It would have been late 90s. It would have been late 90s. It'd have been like 99, because I was going to UGA and all that stuff in 99. So that sounds about right. 98, 99. And then, so I met him in the late 90s. And then just over time, I'd go see them play and I'd sing a song with them, or whatever. And they used to do all these cool, Detroit Rock City was one of my favorites that they did, the Kiss song. and
Mm-hmm.
going and seeing them play. And so we just kind of developed that kind of a professional, and then after a while, now I've been friends with the guy for, 25 years. And, yeah, I've known him for a long time. He's a good dude, great player.
Yeah, well, he's as good as there is, as far as I'm concerned, and
He's
he's an
okay.
even better human.
I tell him if he keeps practicing, he's going to be really good one day.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
I'll say that I'll go to one of their gigs or something still, and they're across the wide now, and I'll be like, if you guys keep practicing, y'all are going to be really good.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate what you're trying to do. I really do. Yeah.
I hear it. I think I kind of hear it.
Did you know Matt when did you meet Mark's brother Matt?
I didn't meet Matt until probably years later, but it would have been at I met him at a bar there in Cumming, Georgia, still there, called Good Old Days, and that would have been more like probably 2012, 2011, somewhere around in there. But they used to play every Sunday afternoon, and you'd go there, and it was kind of like a family thing, It was very impressive. They don't have necessarily rabid fans, but they have a ton of family and friends who are all their fans too. So going and seeing and meeting Matt. I know I met Matt and probably their mother at the same time, Frances, somewhere around in there. And I actually did a couple of songs with Frances a few times, and they're lovely people. It's a musical family. I would say my first gig, I got a call one day from Mark rather, and he said, "Hey, Jody had been working out. Jody likes to work out, and had dropped a weight on it. And I don't know if he broke it or whatever, but he couldn't play. He was in a lot of pain." And so he calls me. This was probably 2013. 2012, 2013, and he calls me and says, "Hey, you sing, and I know you play. You can play with me and Wendell." I'm like, I had to think about it for a second, because these guys are like musical heroes of mine locally. I've always said Cumming, Georgia is kind of like a renaissance of music. There's enough talent just in that town to have one of the best, whatever genre you want, really, right?
It's quite remarkable how many people have come out of that town. It's unbelievable.
It is insane. So him and Wendell were playing a gig, and I went and sat my ass right down in between them and played as best I could, and just let them do the guitar work, and it was phenomenal. But that was my first. So Mark and I really, I'd say our friendship over the last 10, 15 years has definitely been more friendship and respect and camaraderie and all that stuff. And if I ever had a gig I couldn't do, I'd call him, and if he ever had a gig that they couldn't do, they'd call us, and really just kind of a musical community. It's been great.
Yeah, they're just some fantastic people, and I was late to the game of meeting them.
Yeah.
I don't think I met them until 2012, maybe.
Yeah,
somewhere around there. Then I met those guys, but I felt like I'd known them my whole life immediately.
Yeah.
We and I think their story is similar to ours, that they were around music from an early age, around family members that all played music, and kind of grew up being sponges, listening to everything that they could, and just kind of this amalgamation of what all they listened to, and they spit out all this creative stuff, the great songwriters, great singers, So yeah, I have just so much love and respect for those guys.
Yeah, I remember being uncharacteristically excited when they told me you were going to be in the band. I was so happy. I was like, dude, that is so cool. You guys are going to have a great time. Just having those conversations about it. I was probably more excited than you were for you to be. I could not wait to go see them.
It was so much fun for me, because I got to play a lot of songs that I grew up listening to that I'd never gotten to play.
Yeah.
And I played a lot of those songs with different bands over the years, but a lot of those tunes that Across the Wide does, that Jody sings, that I hadn't gotten to play before. And it was just so much fun, and getting to sing those harmony parts with Mark, and yeah, talking about their fans, the people that followed the band or would come to Good Old Days or come to the music store when they had that. I mean, and I'm sure you felt the same way. They treated you like family from the moment you met them. Absolutely. Everybody that came to hear them, they are just the nicest people in the world.
They're the nicest people. And really, that entire community of people, I think they refer to it as the wrong crowd, are just genuine, good people, hardworking people who know how to have a good time, who know how to support a band. I mean, you see the same folks at a lot of their gigs. You see just people follow them around locally and even further out. They've gone several places regionally, but having those having that tight knit community of family like they do is definitely something special. And they have made themselves a spot among North Georgia music, and people know them far and wide. It's just an amazing experience. That entire community, it's really something special to be a part of, and especially in kind of in our hometown of where we grew up, and kind of seeing that.
That's exactly right. They have been very instrumental in keeping music alive in that area.
Well,
and continue to do so.
I was going to say that because kind of like you and I were talking about how nobody really does that anymore. This is kind of what it's evolved into, because when you go to their gigs, it's kind of like a family thing. And I think we always tried to make sure when we were playing, myself and Matt Alexander, trying to make sure that we appreciated people coming out, because it's a big deal. We live in a busy, busy world. We live in a world that demands a lot of everybody. And to be able to take that and take your precious spare time that you have and come spend it with us for 3 hours is truly remarkable. And I think it's, again, one of those things where it's like they could be anywhere doing anything, but they're here doing this with you because they enjoy your music and all that kinds of thing. I think that's always how I've tried to look at a community. And over the last year and a half, I've discovered how big of a community really that I've had and that I didn't know that I had, that I certainly appreciate for several reasons.
Well, Brian, I will tell you what everyone that knows you knows, is that you are a treasure. And when you sing, when you're on stage playing music for people, they know you mean it. And they know that you don't take it lightly. You don't take it lightly. It's not a gig. You're there to share that experience with the people that came to be there with you.
Yeah, because that's really what it's all about. It's no different than when I was a kid and we were all gathered out on the front porch. Everybody's there to have a good time. And I don't look at it as a job. I look at it as a privilege that I get to play this music, and maybe people forget about their craft for a minute, and maybe they remember, I've had so many people come up and go, oh, that song takes me back to when I was 17. I play a lot of older stuff, and but people will be like, man, I remember being in my Pontiac Trans Am, with T-tops, and that song came on the radio. But that's again about connecting back to a memory for a lot of people. Everybody does that. And I truly hope that everybody has that experience at least a couple of times in their life.
That's it. That's exactly it. And I consider myself very lucky in that I've gotten to be the beneficiary of being on stage with you and getting to play and sing with you. And we've done band gigs, we've done all kinds of stuff. But for me, the most fun I would ever have is when you and I would just get to play with just the two of us. It was so much fun.
I remember being like in the back of good old days at the back bar, or maybe out on the patio, just you have a musical catalog that is just really far exceeds anything. I think I have a great musical catalog and taste, but I remember we were playing good old days, and we were playing maybe it was Listen to the Music or something, like maybe some Doobie Brothers or something like that, but just being like, some of these chords I had never even played before, so like, that's good.
You fooled me, man. You sounded great.
Yeah.
And one thing I would always tell people about you is that you would play and sing every song like it was the last one you would ever get to do. And that is just so fantastic to me. And it was inspiring, and it was something I aspired to do, because, there are times when you're tired, you've worked all week, and then you've got to go play, and your mind wants you to just phone it in. But man, when you were on stage, it was inspiring to me to give it more, because I knew that's what you were doing. It was just an inspiring thing to be there with you.
Yeah, I don't know how to do anything halfway as far as music goes. If I play a song, or I'm trying to learn a song and I can't get it right, or I can't at least come up with a version of it that I can digest, I don't play it. I play songs that I know. I play songs that I can play. I play songs that I can sing. I'm not one to try to venture out of the comfort zone. I'm in a way that I will if I have to, but I definitely am a a homebody kind of 4 songs and stuff. But people never got tired of the songs that we played, so we just kept playing songs. People never got tired of it. I never had anybody come up and be like, "Man, you play that song every time." Yeah, but I sing it different every time because, like I said, you never perform the same song twice the same way. And just you may come one week and hear a lot of blues. You may come one week and hear a lot of old country. We always just tried to mix it up, keep it fresh as we could for people.
So I've been wondering about this. How did you meet Matt Alexander and start playing music together?
Well, it was 2012, and we met through a mutual friend of ours. There was this place I used to play called the Robin Hood Tavern. We actually probably played there. I don't know if it was a Robin Hood Tavern at the time. It's been I think it was. And so they were closing down. The restaurant group that owned them, the landlord of the building where they were going to raise the rent, and they were going to be whatever. So they decided just to close down the business. So they had a bash. It was on like a Wednesday before Thanksgiving or something. Okay. It was like sometime around Thanksgiving that they closed down, if I remember right. And I go, my friend Jimmy invites me, this guy named Jimmy Cavanis, who's another local musician guy. And he says, "Hey, they're doing this jam for the Robin Hood Tavern. They're closing down. It'll be the last one. And then they're closing down the next day. They'll be gone." I'm like, okay. So he invites me out. And we had this friend of ours named Jarrett. He was a drummer. Honestly, I don't know his real name, but it's not Jarrett. But he was friends with Matt through a business association, through a business connection. They had done some business together. Matt works at a place that makes signs and stuff, and Lewis, that's his name, Gyro. They were starting a business, and they wanted Matt to do. Anyway, he knew Matt played guitar and whatever. So we go, and I hear this guy play, and immediately I was just, God, this guy is just ripping it up. I mean, he was just slinging these beats. He had an old Telecaster he was playing, and I just remember being very, very impressed with him, and I introduced myself, and we talked, and that was about it. Well, the next week, my friend Jimmy calls me again, and he says, "Hey, I got this gig at a Mexican place called Cinco," and he was like, "I got a gig. Our band is coming, and we've invited a few people out. Come and jam with us again." I'm like, "Okay, I got nothing better to do." And so I went, and then it ended up at one point, myself and Matt, and then we had a bass player and a drummer, and we played Johnny B. Good, and it was probably like an 8-minute version of Johnny B. Good because Matt just went off on some soloing. He's very versatile. He's jazz trained, but he has a good ear for country. He's a big fan of the chicken picking, I like to call it, the Chet Atkins and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So I met him, and it was just immediately I was just like, "Dude, you playing with anybody?" And he's like, "No." He's like, I go back and forth to Alabama a lot, and I play with this band, and we do all this stuff. And okay, and so I get his number, we exchange information, and that's kind of the end of it. That was like the end of November, beginning of December. And in January, I get a call from a guy named Steve Berryhill, who Mm-hmm. Saw him the other day, by the way. Lovely, lovely, lovely man. And
love him.
He said, "Hey, we've been doing this heavy metal thing on Mondays, and it's kind of flittered out, and there's not a lot of people coming in. I saw you play a few months ago with Wendell and Mark." That was right around the time. That's how I knew it was 2012 because I'd played. He's like, "And I really enjoyed you playing. Can you come play like an acoustic night? And we're going to try this acoustic thing for a while." And I'm like, "Okay." He said, "You got anybody to play with you?" And I was like, "I come up with somebody." And so I called a few people. And then I remembered I had this guy, Matt Alexander, his information. So I called him. I said, "Hey, Brian," and we met, and we get to talking. I was like, "Would you be interested in doing this acoustic thing with me?" He's like, "Yeah, that sounds good." And that was 10 years ago. And we played for the better part of a decade. We played, the acoustic thing worked for a while. We had a big thing, and then it kind of fizzled out the fall. People go back to school. I think we did 40 or 45 shows concurrently on a Monday night of all night. It kind of happened at a good time in my life because I had just gotten laid off from a job. I needed extra money. So pretty soon it was like, we're playing that. And we just pretty much played good old days. And then once that ended, it was like, we got nothing. So we started booking shows. I think we got up to where we were doing, I think the most I ever did in a year was probably 85, 90 shows with him. We'd do Friday, Saturday, and then we do private stuff on Sundays, or we do whatever. We play wherever. And it was truly, from the beginning of it, we've never had crosswords. We've had musical discussions and worked songs out and stuff, just like you do when you're a working musician. But meeting him was just kind of by happenstance. Now he's been one of my best friends for the past decade. We've played multiple venues around North Georgia. We played in both. The duo form was kind of the most of what we did. But we also had a band. we went through a few iterations of that. We had a band called Backroom Revival, and some of the guys in the band thought that they owned a piece of the band and they could do this, that, and the other. And I'm like, well, we started this. We're the bosses, me and Matt. And then we changed the name to Jarrett Alexander Band, so nobody would have any question as to who was in charge of the band. Right. So, and you played a couple of gigs with us. I remember playing at the old Castleberry Ale House.
Yes.
We had a piano player, a guy named Wally Haynes, and we had we just had a blast, and we just played every weekend. So for the better part of 10 years, we've played together. I've played 5 gigs in 10 years without him, maybe. I mean, it was just one of those things. We instantly connected. We respect each other. He's just a wonderful human being. I'm friends with his wife. I'm friends with his daughter. They're just amazing family, amazing people. And it's truly been one of the most unexpected blessings in my life to have gotten to play music with him, because he's just so versatile. And so he just, I don't know. He's one of my guitar heroes for sure.
Yeah. Versatile is certainly the perfect word to describe his musicianship. Those handful of times that I played with you guys, I'm like, whoa, he just brings just this very old soul vibe to what every song he plays. It just, whatever he chooses to play, whether it's the licks he plays or the tone in which he plays them, everything just fits the song the right way whenever he does it. It's really cool.
He was I would encourage folks, one of his big influences was a guy named Danny Gatlin. And
Danny Gatton, yeah.
Gatton, okay, yes. Gatton, yeah. I said Gatlin, like he's a Gatlin brother. Danny Gatton, and just, I hear some of those, I'll go back and listen to some of that old stuff, and I'm like, it sounds like Matt up on that stage playing. I mean, he was just so engrossed in that. But again, it was that chicken picking kind of, Danny Gatton was just an amazing, he could make the guitar say anything he wanted it to say.
Yes.
And that's kind of how Matt is in a lot of ways, and I definitely respect it.
Another story for another time, but one of my claim to fame is that I went out on a date with Danny Gatton's daughter when I was in high school.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh,
I had to tell Matt that. I sure did. It was crazy. His Danny's mom used to come to the post office where my mom worked and found out that I did music and started bringing CDs for my mom to give to me. And then
really,
lo and behold, Danny's daughter was going to be in town for a show, and it was this crazy thing. So, but that was
that's interesting.
It was funny.
Another one of those really stories, right? Like we've been friends for 40-some years. It's the first time I've ever heard that story. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and here's one that we talked about offline that I had completely forgotten about. And that was, you went with me on my college visit when I went to look at Belmont University.
You went to go look at Belmont. Yeah, we borrowed your mom's car. It was a white car is all I remember.
She had a Chrysler LeBaron.
I was just about to say LeBaron. I swear I was. But we drove that thing from your house in Alpharetta, Georgia, all the way up. What were we, 18?
Yeah.
We had to be 18. And so you had a friend of yours that had produced some of your earlier records, if I remember right, a guy named Bruce Boughton.
Bruce Boughton, yeah.
He's kind of famous in certain circles, especially.
You talk about Highway 40 Blues earlier. He played steel guitar on that cut. Yeah, that's him.
Wow. I did not know that.
He was with Ricky Skaggs in the 80s.
For the folks out there in podcast land, Bruce Boughton played steel guitar for a guy you might have heard of named Garth Brooks.
Yeah.
He's a big deal because Garth doesn't have slouchers on his album. But we went to go see him, and he was playing at a club. He was playing at the Bluebird Cafe.
He was at the Bluebird, and I called him and told him we were coming.
Yeah, first and only time I ever went to the Bluebird. I remember walking in. There's all these pictures of all these stars, childhood heroes, and they're autographed. And we go in, and Gary Burr was playing. And I remember it was around Christmas time, only because I remember they did like a Jingle Bell. They did like a medley of Christmas songs or something. But I remember Bruce just being over there on this little guitar lap steel. I don't know what he was just wearing
it out.
And I remember just being blown away. I'm like, I've never heard of any of these guys, but look how amazing they are. And just one of those things where it was truly just, I keep coming back to the phrase serendipitous, but it was just like to have been there in that room on that night with you, with my best friend, doing that stuff, man. It was just it was the coolest experience of my life. It was the first time I'd ever left home and gone anywhere.
I will tell you. Where? I remember that was one of the first times I ever kind of felt important in a public setting. I don't know if you remember this. So we got there and like we walked up to the door and they were like, "Oh no."
Yeah.
Because we were going to try to come in and they were like, "Oh no, this is sold out."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh my gosh, my friend's playing tonight. Can you let him know that we're here?"
Yeah. I remember that.
They went inside and then came back out and they're like, "Come with us."
We sat right next to the stage. We were like 2 tables from the stage. It was like front row seats. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was quite an experience. And for those listening to this, just look up Gary Burr and research the songs that he has written over the years. Credits.
He wrote songs for Hal Ketchum. He total just a songwriting of just genius. He had a lot of great songs.
Yeah, I remember he had a notepad on stage that night and like stopped talking at one point and wrote some things down. It was like, when the ideas come, you have to write them down.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was one of those watershed moments for me as a musician, getting to experience that with you. That was incredible. That was a really cool thing.
Yeah.
Do you have any of those moments that kind of happened to you that may have like changed the trajectory of your musical life?
Yeah, I go back to a few, and we've kind of I sort of touched on it earlier, but I didn't tell you the whole story. But when I met Matt Mundy, it was kind of again, just kind of acquaintances at first, and then we've become friends. I'd still say we're kind of acquaintances, but we know each other well enough to sit down and talk and have an intelligent conversation and all this stuff. He's a very soft-spoken guy, very talented musician. And so it was right before this conversation that I found out actually who he was and who he had played with. Some of my musical heroes, including Oteil Burbridge. I remember seeing Oteil Burbridge in good old days one night. Out of all the places in the universe, I'm sitting in a room with Oteil Burbridge, who at the time was playing with the Allman Brothers Band, and I just remember I couldn't go near him. I couldn't get within 20 feet of him because I was just going to fan out or whatever. But one of the conversations I had with Matt that kind of changed the directory or kept me on course. Kind of a two-edged sword, because I remember talking to him, and it was one of those times in my life where this was a few years after I met him, so this would have been probably 2015, 2014, somewhere around in there. And I recently just told him about the story. I never told him what an impact it had on me, but I remember expressing frustration to him of, man, I'm just a bar singer, I kind of regret, not taking it further or pursuing it harder. Because early on, back in 2006, I had an encounter with a high school friend of ours, Zach Brown. And you remember Zach, I know. He's sort of famous now, too, I guess. If he keeps practicing, he'll be good one day. I don't know. But I played a couple of shows with him and really thought that things were going to, pan out, look up. He was inviting me to shows to play with him and stuff, and it was cool. And then they got signed in the whole deal, and they're world famous and all that stuff. But I definitely am thankful for those experiences and the time that he poured into me, over the course of our little interlude there with music. But kind of expressing that frustration to Matt, and I feel like I had this chance and I could have gone on and I could have been this, that, or the other. And he just kind of looked at me. He said, "Well, you play in bars, right?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Do people enjoy it?" And I said, "Yeah, I think so, because that's what I've always prided myself on." He said, "Well, do the people enjoy it?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, do you enjoy it? Are you still happy with playing music?" I said, "Yeah." And he just shook his shoulders. He goes, "And then that's all that you need to know. That's all that there is. It doesn't matter if you're in a bar." And kind of what I took from it was, it doesn't matter if you're in a bar or in a stadium, if the crowd's giving you back the energy that you need, right? It's a self-sustaining kind of symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
He's like, "Are you enjoying what you're doing?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." And he's like, kind of like, "Well, then what the hell are you complaining about?" And kind of looking at it from his perspective of, this is a guy who was a touring musician, a professional musician, and kind of looking at that. And I took that home and I thought about that and chewed on that. And I've never thought about it again. I've never regretted anything else since then. And so I think that I shared that with him recently at back in October. We had a benefit and he was there. And I remember telling him about that and him just being like, shaking his head again, just being like, "Yeah, that's it. Like, that's the secret." Like, it's just the secret to being happy, is being happy kind of where you're at. It was kind of my takeaway from it. But, he was just like, kind of like, "Quit your whining," almost, in a way. You know what I mean? It was just like, well, if you enjoy it and they enjoy it, there's not much beyond that you're happy.
There's a lot of wisdom in that statement, and just in that mindset, that you know, we're always searching for the next bigger and better thing, whether it's in your career, your music career, whatever. And sometimes the simplest path may be the best one, and that's okay. You know,
Yeah,
and I think that I think he's correct in that you you were probably for that little slice of time in those people's lives that were coming to hear you play, you may have been giving them a break from something in their life that maybe they didn't want to be thinking about, or it was enriching their life. And
yeah.
there's you brought a lot of value to
I had a
people.
lady come up to me one time and say, and I wouldn't be able to think of all of them today, but I had a lady come up to me and say, "Hey, you don't know this, but I'm going to tell you this story." And she was kind of a friend, an acquaintance of mine. And she said, "Me and my husband were talking about getting a divorce." She said, and then we decided, "Hey, look, we're going to just try to date each other and and try to work things out or whatever," which was great, obviously. And she said that they came to a restaurant wherever I was playing, and I was there. And she said that they had such a good time that they reconciled, and they actually ended up having twins after that. And I don't know if they were conceived on that night. I don't know, but telling me how really, and I wasn't trying to repair anybody's marriage. I'm up there just singing songs, but they had such a good time. That really meant a lot to me because I felt like I had an impact. And I'm sure that there are I know that there are several stories out there like that of, man, I was feeling down, or we were in a rough patch, or I was this and I was that. And then I came to hear you, and it was just like all of it kind of melted away. And, these folks were able to reconcile and have twins, and they're still together today. And it's just one of those things where that was 15 years ago, probably. I mean, it was just really to have somebody tell you that was really special. And
Man, that's
to get that
great.
stuff back is just, that's kind of what makes it all worth it.
Well, and like I said earlier, you just bring a sincerity and honesty to when you play and sing that it automatic people connect with it because
Yeah.
they know you're the real deal. And when you also happen to be really good while you do it, that just makes it even better.
It does.
So
Well,
it's
that's why
real
I have
good,
Matt.
man.
He makes me sound really good. Well, I play with musicians who far outweigh my own talent. That's the
Mhm.
secret of
Well, what's that old saying? If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in
you're
the
in the
wrong
wrong room.
room. You know, it's like if you're the best musician on stage, you probably need to be playing in a different band.
You probably need to be, yeah. We've had
You
several
should
stories
be
of that over the years. Like,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, you should I always felt like I would be playing with people that I had no business being on stage with because I felt like they were light years ahead of where I would ever be. But I also learned a whole lot from just getting to be next to them and pick up on
right.
what they were doing, you know? Yeah,
The
it's
cream
incredible.
rises to the top, and the cream always brings more cream with it. And it's just, if you play, it's good to stretch out and play kind of with people who are beyond your musical ability, because it really kind of helps you get comfortable with the idea of where you fit into that. Because
Yeah.
make no mistake, I know there are bands out there and every single one of them are world class musicians, but there are also bands out there where there might be a guy who's not as good as everybody else, but he fits into well to what they're doing.
Right. That's
That kind
it.
of thing. So,
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. So so you're not playing a lot of music these days. Um and I know the world misses getting to hear that voice and that playing of yours, Brian.
yeah, for those that don't know, and I talk openly and candidly about it. I was I can get through this without getting too crazy. But back last year in July of 2022, I was diagnosed with intrahepatic cholangiocarcinoma. It's a liver cancer. It's very rare. It is treatable but not curable. And I say for the first 4 or 5 months of treatment, I was fine. I felt fine. What I didn't know at the time is because chemo wasn't working. So that was
Mhm.
kind of a shock. And but then they switched me to a different medication. So I'm a year and a half into this journey now, and it gets to where you have complications and side effects, and it gets to where you just physically are just so tired, that kind of thing. So I think rather than continue on and have my music suffer, I decided to, back in July, I played a show actually at Matt's parents had a party. I think it was his dad's birthday. He was like 80. His parents are in great health, but we played a gig, and then I just told Matt after that, we got to cancel everything. I can't get into the point to where it's a lot of labor, a lot of effort, and I don't think the musical product is as good. I know that sounds crazy, but it was like I just don't have the energy to put into that anymore, and I really want to focus on my health and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
that kind of took a turn. We did play another show back in October because my wife told me I was being a curmudgeon and I needed to get out and made me go book a gig. So I, I did play one at Nofo Brewery up in Gainesville, Georgia, where they had Mule Camp Festival going on up there, and we played, and it was great. But that's the last time I played, and if the opportunity comes along and I feel well enough, I'll play some more. But being out every weekend is no longer a part of what I do, and
Yeah.
I embrace that and I celebrate the fact that I spent so long doing what I love to do and being an able opportunity to meet people and to grow with people, to perform with people like yourself and Mark and Wendell Cox and all those guys and Jody Abernathy, and just being able to get up and play with my friends still is very special. And to be able to have done that for so long at a pretty high clip. I mean, we played a lot of shows a year, so
Yeah.
it was it's one of those things. I definitely look back on it fondly. I still enjoy music and going to hear music. And like you and I had talked about at one point, it's nice to go sit somewhere and listen to music. I have to make sure that the music's good, but to be a fan and a spectator again is something I haven't done since I was 21 years old, and I'm 46 now. So it's been a long time that I'm able to do that. And I'm very, very thankful for it. And to all the people or anybody listening, who was a fan, I just I would just say, thank you. That's all I can say.
Brian, I saw you back in October at the benefit, and the outpouring of love shown to you and your family shows how people feel about you and what you have meant to people and what you brought to their lives. And you're a treasure.
I appreciate that. And I think I mentioned earlier about the outpouring over the last year and a half. And I think that's kind of an outpouring from over 2 decades of, playing for people, and people hear you and people enjoy it. And so I was really taken aback. The very first, back in 2022, we did one also. And it was the same thing. It was just the amount of people, the amount of love, the amount of emotion. We played music. We had fun. We didn't think about anything else. At this last one back in October, which, as I understand it, you flew down pretty much just for that benefit, and I appreciate that.
We came down. We loaded up the family and came down.
Yeah,
because we wanted to be there because we love you.
Yeah. I was very overwhelmed. There were I didn't even know you were coming until I think the day before or the day of, and but seeing people come from far and wide to support our family really meant a lot. And it's just like I said, I kind of adopted the whole wrong crowd, because all those people who were fans of Across the Wide are also a lot of friends and fans of ours, and we would see out at places, and just seeing everybody come together is really a beautiful thing. And I think that I can attribute a lot of that to music. I attribute that to a lot to how I've treated people over the years, because there's just no use in being a mean, evil, a sour person. There's just, I find a lot of joy in trying to help people, or trying to talk to people, or trying to counsel people, trying to make sure that they know that they matter. Because I think at the end of the day, everybody wants to understand that they are loved, and everybody wants to understand that they matter. And I think that if in some small way, I've contributed to that or helped them understand that it's going to be okay. You can listen to this song and it can get you through it, or you can, express it however you want to express it. But really, the outpouring of emotion was very overwhelming, and I appreciate you and all the guys from Across the Wide for coming. And it's just one of those things where I just feel blessed, man, in a time of, it's always great to count your blessings, especially when things are darkest. I truly believe that. It has changed my outlook on life to kind of approach things from that way, because I'm grateful. I'm grateful for everything. I mean, how can I not be? How could I not be?
Well, Brian, I love you, buddy. And
man, I love you too.
And I have since the beginning, as long as I've known you, you're one of my dearest friends in the world. You always have been. And I just love you. And we're thinking of you and your family and praying for you. And just thank you for the joy you've brought our family. Thank you for the joy you've brought to countless people who've just been blessed to meet you and be part of your life.
Yeah, it's really, I honestly just look at it, it's just been an honor. And I said this at the very first benefit, you don't get far in this business or in this venture of, playing music without depending on your audience and your crowd. And I think I, over time, have learned that they aren't just fans and they aren't just fans and friends, they're family. And learning that you have a much bigger family than you thought you did really is reassuring, especially in a time of like today, how things are. I think it's important that people maintain that. And if I can leave people with anything, it would be, to put your faith in each other, to put your people first, tell your people that you love them every day. Because, it might not be cancer. It might be something else. It might be, we're not guaranteed tomorrow. And I think that if you live your life every day, like you don't know if tomorrow's coming, you'll be vastly rewarded. You will have a much deeper appreciation for people. And you will, I think that it brings a lot of joy to live in the moment and to tell people as you're thinking it, hey, I love you. I tell my wife all the time, we'll just be watching TV. I love you. Thank you. And that kind of thing. And being grateful for the time that we are given, whether it's, a short time or a long time, because with gratitude comes understanding. And I think that if you're grateful for something, you can't be anxietized about life also.
Yeah.
I got rough days just like everybody else. I won't pretend that it's all cupcakes and burritos and, cupcakes and burritos. I don't know where that came from. And it's not, but there's always time for joy. I do believe that.
Well, buddy, I can't thank you enough for spending some time with me today.
Absolutely.
And I love you, buddy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, I heard tell you were leaving. You had your fill of me, Carolina bound. Well, don't mind me if I don't seem too concerned. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna help you pack right now. Well, I'm gonna buy you a ticket on a Greyhound, an airplane or hot air balloon. Don't let the screen door hit you. Where the good Lord's picture, and if I see your ass again, it'll be too soon. Yeah. They say that love's a gamble. Well, but go like rolling snake eyes every time. Your bad love a little more than I can handle. Every winter breaking even just to barely getting by. Oh no, I'm gonna buy you a ticket on a Greyhound, an airplane or hot air balloon. Don't let the screen door hit you. Where the good Lord's picture, and if I see your ass again, it'll be too soon. All right. Should be going. Well, if you don't leave right now, you're gonna miss your ride. Well, don't call me, baby, I'll call you. When you'll freeze over and money rains from the sky. Well, I'm gonna buy you a ticket on a Greyhound, an airplane or hot air balloon. Don't let the screen door hit you. Where the good Lord's picture,